So yesterday's video had me thinking a little bit more about the idea of constraints. The idea that we're setting deadlines for ourselves to submit, because if we kind of leave ourselves to our own devices, we would endlessly just tinker with our projects and never send anything off. And I think it comes to a broader point, which is I believe that art works well within constraints. Within certain conventions, within certain rules, I think art tends to flourish a lot. If you think about it, and a good example, honestly, you people see a lot is in film, where whenever you see like a director that basically is given like unbridled control over their projects, they tend to be self-aggrandizing, right? They tend to show the best and the worst of a certain director, and often the worst tends to stick out. My God, if you consider like if anyone's seen the Oppenheimer film, right? That's a film where the director had complete control over this project. I mean, I don't think there were many constraints put on Nolan when he made this. And what we got basically was almost a 3-hour film that had many long slogs that could have been trimmed, that had many parts of it that could have been shortened, certain scenes that were there that didn't need to be in the film, but just to sort of pack it in, basically, right? Just to pack the runtime, just to make the story, the movie feel more epic, that they existed. You had some of the weirdest dialogue as well ever. You had a mix of like real scientific speak and like discussion mixed in with this sort of narrative that was very plotting, was very, very slow. You had music and you had a score that basically made the first like 30 minutes of the film feel like a trailer, right? Like just this score that underpinned everything at the beginning. And very clearly it was just someone who was left to their own devices. And so I enjoyed them. By the way, I enjoyed the film, by the way, despite all that. But again, that's an example of artwork where the creator had no constraints, had no runtime to fill, he had no budget to work with. That you know what I mean? Like the budget was more or less unlimited. There were no challenges presented to him, and when there aren't any kind of constraints or any kind of limits or any kind of parameters, the work becomes very challenging, right? Like it becomes this sort of massive heap that the creator might enjoy, but it's not going to appeal to kind of a wider audience. It's not going to stand out. And it's true for writing as well. If I told you to write a short story and didn't give you a word count, if you weren't given constraints on when to submit it by, if you weren't given certain rules basically about the submissions, perhaps a certain topic to discuss, etc., right? If you didn't have even an act structure, right? If you didn't have a conventional maybe 3-act structure for a story or conventional ways of storytelling, the work would seem very jumbled and it would most likely be a mess. Yes, I think every now and then you'd get a story that would stand out, that would be fantastic, but for the most part, rules tend to help us out. And in fact, it's the creation of these rules and the creation of these conventions that makes the stories that break the conventions stand out even more. And so this is, I guess, just kind of a larger philosophical idea, but I think for us creators, we should embrace a bit more of the rules and conventions, and then within them start to break those conventions later on. But understanding that within these parameters, that's when the strong work can actually come out.